the cinematic sea of prequels, sequels, reboots, and reimaginings, the Movie Retakes podcast considers the merits and desires for Hollywood's new takes on our beloved movie classics. Brothers Matt and Chris Sully examine the latest retake franchises, pitch their own original retake visions, and share their love for the movies that made them. This is Big Brother Chris Sully.
And this is Matt Sully. We're welcoming you to another fantastic episode of Movie Retakes, and this Movie Retakes episode is all about Gremlins. Please, if you're listening and you haven't already, follow us, subscribe to us, and leave reviews. We love reviews, especially all those 5-star ones. And we have a specific fan to thank today.
That's right. From Apple Podcasts, we got a 5-star review titled The Michael Jordan of Podcasts from Gilgarth91. The review reads as follows. The GOAT debate is over. This podcast is officially the best ever. Not one, but two Sullys talking about movies and how they would retake the sequel. Honestly, the movie knowledge these guys bring and the research they do for each episode is bar none. I did not leave this review for a chance at Sully Bucks. Nice shout out.
But you probably get some for it.
Maybe. Too good. Yeah, please leave those reviews. We appreciate it. And interact with us on Twitter. We'll get to more of that later in the episode. You guys are already doing it, but we really love the interaction. Mm-hmm. As my brother stated, we've got an episode all about Gremlins. Spoiler alert, I freaking love these movies. So it's going to be a fun one. I think you do too. We'll find out in a minute.
Yeah.
This was just the opening. Stay tuned throughout the episode as we answer some very important questions like, who thought CGI meant the end of his acting career? Who is Mr. Dracula? And which game show host voiced Gizmo?
So many. Was it, I always insult Harvey, Steve Harvey, that's it. I always say it's, I always laugh at Steve Harvey. He does the Family Feud now.
Yeah.
And the dude's just awful at it. Like, he's a nice guy, but he's supposed to come up with all these like one-liners and stuff. And most of the time, his reaction is just to stand there and stare at somebody awkwardly. Like, that's funny. And, it doesn't always work. But I still love that show.
I say he has his moments. I've seen a couple of clips where he has some really good ones, but I haven't watched it regularly enough to catch the cringy moments.
I mostly just make fun of him for his suits. Like, where he does he just always has these oversized suits. Anybody ever see anybody in an oversized suit? I'm like, oh, he's wearing a Steve Harvey suit. I don't know.
He's actually 6'4", 170 pounds, but he looks much bigger.
Why? You should get the slim fit, fella. Well,
oh, too good.
We been busy, especially watching all these Gremlins movies. But what else are you watching?
You know what? I got a long list, so I'm going to get through it a little faster than normal, but a couple of really good movies recently. Just Mercy with Jamie Foxx, Michael B. Jordan, and Brie Larson. It's actually free on Apple Movies as part of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it was fantastic. I highly recommend Jamie Foxx's best performance, I think. He killed it.
I like him as an actor.
Really good.
Collateral.
Oh, same.
Collateral, man. That's one of my favorite movies, and he just nails that. Like, he's good.
He's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
So is Tom Cruise. I think that's one of his best movies. Collateral.
I need to go rewatch that.
Ooh.
It's been a minute.
It's good.
I finally got around to watching The Hunt with Betty Gilpin, Ethan Suplee, and there's a very good surprise actress in that one. That's the one that made it to theaters for like a minute, I think, before everything, and then was available for purchase. I finally got it for rental cheaper. Catching up on some of my favorite TV shows, The Curse of Oak Island, which I think I have yet to really preach this one to you. We'll have to talk about that separately at some point. Amazing, frustrating show that you must watch, The Curse of Oak Island on History.
All right.
Catching up on Outlander on Starz. Love that show. So good. The new HBO Max is out. I got access and watched all of the new Anna Kendrick series Love Life, which is very interesting. I really like the setup on that one, and she's a fantastic actress. And the season finale of season 2 of What We Do in the Shadows just aired, and that show is bar none my favorite on television right now. Hilarious. Oh, podcasts. I'm catching up with Mark Maron on the WTF podcast, and good God, it's been a tough couple of weeks for that man. He lost his girlfriend, Lynn Shelton, who died tragically, but has managed to push on. I had to wait a little while before I could listen to that one. He handles it very well, and he seems to actually be in a pretty good headspace, considering. I pray for him.
That was a rough episode.
And you did listen as well, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to, because he's that's one of my favorite things about his show is that he just puts it all out there. Like that's his outlet, and he's never afraid to say what he wants to say. And he, a lot of people could have pulled back and said, that's a private matter, but he genuinely seems to share, like, his audience is his family, and this podcast is his outlet, and so he does not shy away from sharing his emotions, and he definitely does on that episode, and it's gut wrenching.
It was like 2 days after her passing.
Yeah,
that he aired it or recorded it. Insane. Catching up on ID10T with Chris Hardwick, and then of course my friends all doing live podcasts all over the place. Geek Together, STS guys, Four Dorksmen, they're all just going at it during this crazy time in the world, providing great content for people to engage with. I love it. And then a lot of gaming for me, of course. I've been live streaming on Mixer, playing a lot of Animal Crossing, which I've crossed 220 hours of gameplay now.
Wow.
That's insanity. Almost every minute of that live streamed. Call of Duty Modern Warfare Warzone, Tetris 99, Halo 5, Doom Eternal. I'm all over the place.
Cool. Yeah, we don't have a lot of overlap. Been watching a few movies. I watched Jack Reacher. I don't know that a lot of people have watched that, but I really enjoyed it. Even though Tom Cruise doesn't fit. I'm a big reader of those books. I think I've read pretty much all of them, and he is pretty much the exact opposite of what that character's supposed to be. The guy's supposed to be huge, like really tall, massive build. And there's even lines that are still in the movie that don't fit Tom Cruise that are meant to reflect what he's supposed to look like, where, you'll know the guy when you see him, because you're supposed to walk into a room, or he walks into a room and everybody's just be like, that's a big dude, but Tom Cruise is just a little guy. But, I still like Tom Cruise. So it's still an enjoyable movie, but yeah, he's not actually that character. That was a big complaint for that, but I wouldn't mind seeing him continue to do more of those. I watched Lethal Weapon again, The Ghost Rider, which I'd never watched before. Vanessa really wanted me to see that with Pierce Brosnan and Ewan McGregor. Sorry. So yeah, Pierce Brosnan, Ewan McGregor. It's okay, but it was directed by Roman Polanski, and I've not seen a bunch of his stuff, and I don't really. Everybody raves on him and stuff, but I don't know. I have not been itching to go see anything by him, so I think that may have actually been the first movie I've seen of Roman Polanski's. The Omen, watched, and I didn't remember that was Richard Donner that directed The Omen.
What?
Yeah, strange, but it's good. It's a creepy movie. I've seen it a few times and never anxious to watch it, but she likes to watch horror movies all the time, so I get wrangled into these things. To offset that, we watched Big Trouble in Little China. So that's always good times. And you probably saw I was posting we went out to the drive-in as we were anxious to go see a movie at the theater again, and that was our first opportunity to do so. So we went out to a drive-in. It's like 45 minutes from here, and that was a lot of fun. I'd never been to one before. They didn't have the snack area open or anything, but it was pretty cool. You just sit in your car and watch the screen. You tune in on a FM channel now. You don't get the little thing that's speaker sits on your window or anything. But there's mosquitoes out there, so people, veterans, we noticed, brought like full mosquito nets they draped over their cars so they could roll down their windows. But we're in there, looking like like teenagers parked somewhere because the thing's all fogging up from the inside, and we did get a few mosquitoes in when we needed a fresh air, but other than that, it was still a lot of fun. We did not stay for the E.T. It was like a dual thing. They played Trolls World Tour, which was the first one, and then E.T. afterward. But they didn't start until 8 p.m. And so a little bit late for the young 9-year-old to stay out for that sort of thing, to watch E.T. It's a shame. I would have liked for her to see that. I think we have watched it before with her. But anyway, yeah, a little bit late to stay out for a double feature. We're watching Ozark. We're in season 2, I believe.
Yeah.
Still enjoying that. It's pretty good. It's one of those shows where you're just nervous the whole time. You know, nobody's safe, and who's gonna die this episode? And yeah, but you still like it.
Yeah, it's so good though.
And we've been watching Modern Family. We watched that a long time ago. I don't remember how far we got into it, so I'm waiting for that moment where we're like, oh, here's where we dropped off, because we were just kind of it wasn't a show we would tune in every week. It was just like when we happened to see it, we saw it. And so far we've seen most of these episodes, but still really hilarious. We're pretty far in. We're like in season 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's an amazing cast on that show. One of those perfect blend ensemble casts.
It really is. There is no character on there I don't laugh at and enjoy. Like, they're all really, really well done. All right. Well, so we've been watching a lot of stuff. I don't have a good segue into this. So here's my behind the scenes segment. Last episode, we talked about animation and film. This behind-the-scenes segment is about practical effects, CGI, actors, and their intertwined and uncertain futures. The Gremlins franchise spans the introduction of a computer-generated imagery into film, yet neither movie utilizes CGI. Their practical effects are done through puppetry, animatronics, and stop-motion techniques that are often encompassed within the general profession of special effects. These types of practical special effects brought us timelessly fantastic movies like Jaws, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Evil Dead, The Fly, and An American Werewolf in London, which is hands down the best werewolf transformation sequence of all time. Then there's CGI, which has been gradually introduced into film over the past 5 decades. That was shocking when I wrote that it's actually been going around that long. Probably a little bit longer, actually. But 5 decades, to the point where entire characters and also entire movies have been made exclusively using computers. Tron in 1982 downloaded us into the world of computers, introducing stunning visuals of light cycles and digital sidekicks. The Abyss in T2 gave us jaw-dropping liquid effects. Gravity, a movie located almost entirely in space, was said to be 80% CGI. It's hard to know what the world of special effects will look like in the future. CGI characters and effects are amazing when they come out, and you think, it doesn't get any better than this, and then it does. Rick Baker, who did the creature effects for Gremlins 2, retired in 2015, specifically citing the use of CG as the catalyst. But recent directors have unified in their rejection of pushing CG to the forefront of their movies. George Miller claims 90% of the special effects in Mad Max Fury Road were practical. Star Wars The Force Awakens leaned on puppets and practical effects, much like its predecessors. Christopher Nolan, who mostly uses CGI for wire and rig removals in his stunt sequences, has said he never wants to make CGI-heavy movies. There are usually 2 different goals in a visual effects movie, says Nolan. One is to fool the audience into seeing something seamless. The other is to impress the audience with the money spent on the spectacle of the visual effect, and that I have no interest in. As things change in how Hollywood makes movies, there have been questions by those on both sides of the movie screen as to the future of special effects and the future of actors themselves. Before releasing Final Fantasy in 2001, a movie starring Aki Ross, the world's first photorealistic computer-generated actress, Tom Hanks said he was genuinely worried that he and his acting colleagues would soon be replaced by CGI. Hanks' concerns were rejected by George Lucas, however, saying, I believe that I have used more digital characters than anyone else, but I don't think I would ever use the computer to create a human character. It just doesn't work. You need actors to do that. Steven Spielberg has agreed with Lucas, saying it's a non-issue. But what if the intention of CG isn't replacement of actors so much as their preservation? Carrie Fisher was brought back to life in The Rise of Skywalker with unused footage from the other Star Wars films, which some feel isn't the same comparison as talking about CGI, but what if they need her again? Using real-life footage and photos from James Dean's life, an actor who died in 1955, he'll be resurrected via CGI in the upcoming movie Finding Jack. Darren Handler, director at the company Digital Domain, has a suite of services offering actors a range of different scans to capture their famous faces from every conceivable angle, making it simpler to recreate them later. During this pandemic, when production everywhere is halted and actors and film crews are restricted from working for the very reason that they are living, breathing beings, now is exactly the right time for Hollywood to consider moving to replace people with CGI. Considerations have already been discussed to do away with background actors, though no notions have been made public of doing away with actors altogether. But that's now. Will we see a day when CG is so flawless and affordable and with a database of long-dead actors at the ready that we'll no longer need living actors? Tom Hanks thought so, and in 2004 embraced the idea by using photorealistic CGI versions of himself for the movie Polar Express. And in theory, those templates could be used for any movie in the future. The next generation may very well be streaming the latest Tom Hanks, James Dean blockbusters made entirely by computers using digital actors from a bygone land called Hollywood.
Wow. Yeah, that is something I have thought about and talked about with some friends many times over. And I kind of agree with what was said in there about, like, I don't think you can replace a current actor, but moving forward, I could see bringing people back. I didn't know that about the James Dean movie coming up. Mm-hmm. I think that's a real possibility.
And I didn't really touch on, we've seen it a lot too, where they de-age actors. So,
yep.
You take them and then you make them look 40 years younger. So, and it looks really good now. Like what they do with Michael Douglas and, what was it, Ant-Man or something?
Ant-Man.
I couldn't believe how good that looked.
Me either.
It was
jaw-dropping.
It was shocking. And, think about that now. So what if we have Michael Douglas at all ages? So you can use him in any movie as anyone. And especially with his, resume of film, especially these actors that have done a lot of different movies. Heck, at this point, you could probably cut together a movie using different lines from clips of all the movies an actor has been in before. It won't seamlessly work together, but, it's there. And I used to not... It sounds silly. You sound like a conspiracy sort of theorist when you say things like, oh, we're all going to be replaced by computers, because everybody said that in every capacity, in every job they talk about. And sometimes they're right. They have been. But
yep,
I don't know. Honestly, I can't say. I'd like to be able to say that we always need real people. But
at least for now, there's a life and a soul that a real actor provides that a CGI never seems to be able to provide. Whether or not they just do that with their voice, or if they're doing the dot suit things, the whatever you call it, the motion capture, mocap. It's very interesting. For the other day, I was watching the PlayStation Live event as they finally showed off the PlayStation 5 that's coming later this year. And there was a trailer for the new NBA 2K game featuring Zion Williams, the new guy just out of college playing for the Pelicans. I swear to you, I was looking at the screen. I have a high-resolution screen. I was looking at it as he introed it, sitting in front of a green screen, and I'm looking at it going, is that really him or is that a computer? And then they showed the trailer for the game, and it's him slam dunking a basketball. I couldn't tell if it was real or not.
Wow.
First time I think I've ever been completely just like tricked. I don't know if it was tricked. I don't know if it was real. I don't know what I was looking at, but it was so realistic.
Well, and that's the thing is I have a line in there about, it looks really amazing, and you think you can't do any better. Like when all these movies come out and you see that stuff for the first time, and you are blown away every time because that's what we hadn't seen it before. Then you watch that same movie in not every case, but in a lot of cases, you go back and watch those movies and be like, man, that doesn't look so good, because now things are so much better. When are we at a point where it's maxed out and our eyes are the only, it's like these televisions, they keep adding more pixels or whatever and enhance it in some way. And like, at some point, it won't matter how much clearer you make the image. My eyes won't know the difference. I am the restricted thing here. I'm the hurdle you have to get over. So maybe that'll happen. And
then it'll just be a point of how you get that information into your brain. They'll bypass your eyes and do something else.
Yeah. Well, we'll go back to smell-o-vision, and they'll add...
That was such a big hit for 5 minutes.
That'll be the next gimmick when everybody's over the 3D. I don't know if we're still into that or not. Let's talk some Gremlins.
Oh, yeah.
All right, here we are. Gremlins 1. The synopsis is, a boy inadvertently breaks 3 important rules, and I think you out there all know the rules. What are they? All right.
They're saying
That's
saying it to the radio right
yeah,
now.
That's right. I heard all of them. Concerning his new pet and unleashes a horde of malevolently mischievous monsters on a small town. Boy, that's a tongue twister.
It is.
Cuts to it, though, yeah. Basically, he screws up and there's monsters everywhere. Great. This stars Zach Galligan, which basically everybody knows from Gremlins, and that's about it. But this guy's still working. He's got 4 movies in post-production right now. Hadn't been anything in of note other than cameos on TV shows. Even in Hellraiser 3, he's his character is room patron getting stabbed with pool stick, and he's not even credited. But yeah, he's in a lot of stuff, and I know he was a big proponent of trying to get a Gremlins 3 off the ground.
I bet
Hoyt Axton is in this, as well as his Zach's dad. He unfortunately died in 1999. Before that, he was in Black Stallion in 79, We're No Angels in 89, and a lot of TV from all the way from Bonanza to Growing Pains. Frances Lee McCain, the mom in this, she's fantastic, and honestly maybe my favorite character in the movie.
Yep.
She was in Footloose in 84, Back to the Future in 85, Stand By Me in 86, Scream in 96, Patch Adams in 98, True Crime in 99, and also lots of television from all the way from Mod Squad to Better Call Saul. Phoebe Cates is in this. You'll know her from Fast Times at Ridgemont High back in 82, Bright Lights Big City in 88, Shag in 89, and Drop Dead Fred in 91. And then she kind of just went away. I mean, she married Kevin Kline, and I guess that's all she needed. But that's unfortunate. Would like to see more Phoebe Cates in every capacity. Polly Holiday is in this as well, as Mrs. Deagle.
I'll catch the beast myself. And he'll get what he deserves. A slow, painful death. Maybe I'll put him in my spin dryer on high heat.
That'd do it all right.
She's most notably played Flo Castleberry back a long time ago on the TV series Alice and Flo. Those are from 1976 to 1981. She was also in Mrs. Doubtfire in 93. Judge Reinhold is in this. You'll know him from probably Stripes in 81, also in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Beverly Hills Cop in 84. Maybe a lot of people know him from that. Ruthless People in 86. He was also in Beverly Hills Cop 2 in 87, Vice Versa in 88, Beverly Hills Cop 3 in 94. And then he was in The Santa Claus in 94, Santa Claus 2 and 3 in 2002 and 2006. So, I mean, he's got quite a bit. He's just always working as well. And I love that guy. Everything he's in, I love him. Dick Miller's in this as Mr. Futterman. He died in 2019, so not too long ago. And that guy was in a ton of stuff. He seems to be a favorite of Joe Dante. He worked with him in quite a few things. Piranha in 78. He was in 1941 and 79, which is a weird statement to say. Used Cars in 80. He was in The Howling in 81, Explorers in 85, Project X in 87, The Burbs in 89. And he did a lot of television as well, all the way from Dragnet up to ER. Glenn Turman is the science teacher, Mr. Hansen. He's in Deep Cover in 92, How Stella Got a Groove Back in 98, Sahara in 05, Burlesque in 2019, Super 8 in 2011, and he did regular spots on TV, including Different World, The Wire, Fargo, How to Get Away with Murder, and Mr. Mercedes, so quite a bit of stuff there too. And finally, Corey Feldman. He was in The Goonies in 85, Stand By Me in 86, Lost Boys in 87, License to Drive in 88. I love that movie. He voiced Donatello in only 1 and 3 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. I'm not sure what happened. And I think that was Secret of the Ooze on the second one. The secret was we couldn't get any of the voice actors back. I don't know.
Oof.
Joe Dante directed Gremlins. And you'll hear the overlap here with some of the projects I mentioned for Dick Miller. Piranha in 78. He directed The Howling in 81. He did a segment for Twilight Zone, the movie, in 83. After Gremlins, he did Explorers in 85. Inner Space in 87, which is a great movie. The Burbs in 89, which is a rock solid film. I love that movie.
Yep.
Gremlins 2, he came back to direct that in 1990. Matinee in 93. Small Soldiers in 98. And he's done a lot of TV as well. Dozen different shows ranging from Police Squad in 82 to the Hawaii Five-0 reboot in 2017. So he's still been working for quite a bit too. And he's got 2 movies in pre-production right now.
I just rewatched Inner Space last week. Man, it holds up. It's such a good film.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, and I've seen Matinee a few times. I've seen The Howling. I think I've seen everything he's done. I have not seen Piranha, but I think I've seen every other
I don't think I've seen
movie
Piranha
that he's
either.
done, and I've liked him. Like he's good. He's an enjoyable director. He's got a certain sort of there's a fun sort of darkness and everything, but there's always usually some comedy. He's got a look to him, you know. He's got cool stuff. Chris Columbus wrote this. You'll know him as a director of movies like Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone, and The Chamber of Secrets. He also wrote The Goonies in 85, 9 Months in 95, and Christmas with the Cranks in 04. Gremlins came out in 1984, and we covered that year with our Ghostbusters and Dune episodes. Gremlins was number 4 of the highest grossing box office recordings that year. Came under Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters, and Beverly Hills Cop. And this came out June 8th, the summer release, same week as Ghostbusters. The Karate Kid was 1 week after.
Wow.
And it did enormously well. This thing did $212 million worldwide gross. That's up to date. And on an $11 million budget. First of all, I can't believe that budget. That budget is impressively low.
Yes.
And then you made $200 million on your movie?
That's insane.
Yeah, you did it right. Good job. And it's well loved, 84% Rotten Tomatoes. We'll get into it, but there's very little to complain about in Gremlins. Then there's Gremlins 2, the new batch. That was a bad segue. It sounds like all I have is complaints, but it's not true. The synopsis for Gremlins 2 is not much. The Gremlins are back. This time they've taken control of a New York City media mogul's high-tech skyscraper. So we do get Zach Galligan again. We get Phoebe Cates. Dick Miller's even there. Key Luke, Mr. Wing, the old shop owner, comes back for the beginning scene. Then we get some more leads for part 2. John Glover as Daniel Clamp. And I recognize him from Scrooge in 88.
Yep.
Payback in 99. But he was also in Annie Hall back in 77. The Incredible Shrinking Woman in 81. White Knights in 85. He was in Batman and Robin in 97. And he was also in TV shows, The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd. He was also the voice of the Riddler on Batman, the animated series. A lot of people probably know him from Smallville. He was also in Brimstone and The Good Wife. Then we get Robert Prosky as Grandpa Fred. He died in 2008. Really cool guy. I've seen him in quite a few things, and he's always just very likable. Yeah. He's in Thief in 81, Christine in 83, The Natural in 84, Outrageous Fortune in 87, Broadcast News in 87, The Great Outdoors in 88, Last Action Hero, Rudy, Mrs. Doubtfire, all came out in 1993. That was his year. Television, he was on Hill Street Blues and The Practice. And this guy was fantastic. I'd like to have seen him in a bunch more stuff. Robert Picardo as Forrester in this. You've seen him in something. I guarantee you, anybody out there who isn't a fetus, if you haven't seen Robert Picardo in something, I will pay you $5. Here's some of the things that he's done. The Howling in 81, Oh God, You Devil 84, Explorers in 85. So he's also kind of a go-to for Dante. Those are his couple of his movies. Legend in 85, Back to School in 86, Inner Space in 87, The Burbs in 89, Loverboy in 89. He did the voice of Johnny Cab in Total Recall. He was in LA Story in 91, Star Trek First Contact in 96. He did a lot of television, including Alice, Wonder Years. I remember him from Wonder Years. China Beach.
Same.
Star Trek Voyager. He does voices for Justice League series, and he was on Stargate SG-1. So, yeah, like I said, he's covered so many different types of things, especially with sci-fi and fantasy here. So every one of you have seen him in something at some point, or you will when you start watching some of these older shows, I guess. Sir Christopher Lee is in this as Dr. Catheter.
What a name.
You probably know him as Saruman in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. He's also Count Dooku in the Star Wars movies. Dude's been acting since 1946. He's been in The Man with the Golden Gun in 74, Airport 77 in 1977, Return from Witch Mountain in 78, and he's played Dracula 10 different times. There are 10 different movies that he has been Dracula. So
there was a nice subtle shout out in that little music interlude when he was on screen during Gremlins 2 that totally played homage to that too.
Oh yeah. That thing is very Gremlins 2 is very meta. It's constantly just talking about real life stuff and has a lot of fun. Haviland Morris is also in this as Marla Bloodstone, also a crazy name. You might have seen her in Reckless or 16 Candles back in '84. Remember she was the blonde that Anthony Michael Hall ends up with in the car? Yeah, very lovely.
That was her?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's got those striking eyes. Like, they look almost fake.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, she goes from blonde to, like, that stark red hair. She was in Who's That Girl in '87, Home Alone 3 in '97. And then she's done some TV as well, One Life to Live, One Tree Hill. Getty Watanabe as Mr. Katsuji is in this. Love this guy. Everything I've seen him in, he is hilarious. He always plays stereotypical Asian guy with an obsession of electronics and photography and stuff.
Can you work a TV camera? Work a camera? I am the camera. Oh, good. Come on.
But hey, that was the 80s. And he seemed to enjoy it. He was in Volunteers in '85, Gung Ho in '86, UHF in '89. Yeah, love that movie.
I forgot about that movie. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's funny. He ain't seen no Rocky. Voice of Ling in Mulan '98, Alfie in '04. He was in Forgetting Sarah Marshall in '08, and he was in the 47 Ronin in 2013, which I can't quite place him there, but
me either.
I have seen that movie a couple times. I like that one. And another answer to our trivia, Howie Mandel is the voice of Gizmo. You might know him as the host of Deal or No Deal, but he was also in Little Monsters back in '89, and he did voices for the Muppet Babies show and his own show, the Bobby's World show. Pretty funny guy. And once you hear it, anybody who watched Bobby's World, you make that connection right away because it's pretty much the same voice.
Well, now I saw his name appear on the credits for part 2, and the voice didn't sound any different from part 1. Did he also do part 1 and did it uncredited?
No, he did both. I just didn't mention it until
okay.
And I think he's
well. I didn't see his name mentioned on 1, like in the opening or anything. Maybe he renegotiated a contract to get a better like his name on the opening credits when 2 started, or I just didn't notice.
Was it even highlighted in the opening credits? I wasn't really looking.
It was in part 2. Yeah,
okay.
I did see that. It was like the last thing, and Howie Mandel as the voice of Gizmo.
Oh, I see. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
probably,
one of those. Mm-hmm.
Probably a good negotiation there then. So Joe Dante directed this also. Chuck Jones is a director here for those animated sequences. Yeah.
That was a weird opening.
It was strange. But fitting. Anyway, the writers for this is Charlie Haas, and he wrote Tron back in '82, Matinee in '93, and his first movie is called Over the Edge, and that's from 1979. And I watched the trailer for this thing on IMDb, and it looks kind of cool. Like it's about these these rebellious teens in this small town. One of them gets killed or something, and they just basically go crazy on the adults and take over the town, and it looks pretty cool.
Never heard of it.
I'm gonna look that one up and try and find it somewhere. Now this came out in 1990. That year we had Kindergarten Cop, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Die Hard 2, Back to the Future 2, Total Recall, Dances with Wolves, and I'm moving up the chain here of who made the most money. Pretty Woman, Home Alone, and then Ghost topped it all. $505 million that movie made.
When's that sequel coming out?
Yeah. Well, with all the CG stuff, anytime we want. And all of those movies in that list broke 200 million. So we talked about box office, what to expect from movies in 1990. You can tell people are going to the movies and spending lots and lots of money.
If my life depended on it, I would not have agreed that Back to the Future 2 and Dances with Wolves came out in the same year. To me, those were very different years. Like, I can't remember that those were out at the same time. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, because some of these are so different, and our associations are probably just when you saw them. You may not have seen them that year. So when you saw them, it was probably a little bit later. We might have seen... I'm pretty sure I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Back to the Future at the theater. Probably Kindergarten Cop also. I don't know if I saw Ghost there. Home Alone I would have seen at the theater. Mm-hmm. But some of those other ones probably would have seen later. All those are really good movies. This also was a summer release. Came out June 15th along with Dick Tracy, which did not break the $200 million. Yeah, probably didn't even make $1 million. I don't know. I didn't look it up, but not successful. Which is kind of crazy. Like we get so many, and I think we mentioned this before, but we get so many comic book movies now. But that was a big deal back then.
Yep.
And I think we had Batman around the same time, but
89.
Yeah, but Dick Tracy, not a great movie. But man, it looks really cool. Like they just went for it with the makeup and costume and set design for that thing. It looks cool. It's worth a watch just for that because they went for a comic look, and it's still pretty neat. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And now, unfortunately, a totally different story for Gremlins 2. $50 million budget, so they gave them a lot more money, but they didn't make it back. $41 million. Worldwide sales for this thing, so they lost money on this, and not well loved. You see the reason why. It's 69% for Rotten Tomatoes. Well, let's talk about, we rewatched these.
Yep.
Let's stick with Gremlins 1. What do you have to say about the first Gremlins?
I have watched Gremlins 1 so many times over the years. It's a staple for Christmas movies for me. I feel like I've got to watch it once a year, and I love it every time. I still am amazed how I'll really focus when we do these rewatches, because I want to pick up everything from who's listed in the credits, in the opening, in the end, stuff that's going on in the background, things that I don't normally really laser focus in on. And this one just holds up in every single way. Every frame of this movie is beautiful, is so much fun, and it's still the weirdest concoction of genres. You've got sci-fi, essentially, horror, comedy, and even drama in this movie. I don't know that you could ever pitch this now and make it happen. I think people would laugh you out of a room if you tried to pitch this kind of style of film. But thank God this exists, because I'd like to see more like it. Mm-hmm. I love that mixture. It was really well done. I love the feel of the film, and this is bleeding a little bit into it too, but the feel of 1 is so solid all the way through. 2 feels fake. 1 feels very authentic and real, small town. That whole opening with Chinatown where he goes down into the shop has such a cool vibe to it. Mm-hmm. I love the way Gizmo hums his little song, but it's also used in several different pieces of music that are overlaid with the film and in the soundtrack in very different styles, but it always carries that tune throughout. Gizmo, one of the takeaways, there's a couple negatives maybe. The rules.
Look, mister, there's 3 rules you've got to follow.
Yeah, what kind of rules?
Keep him out of the light. He hates bright light, especially sunlight. It'll kill him. And keep him away from water. Don't get him wet. But the most important rule, the rule you can never forget, no matter how much he cries, no matter how much he begs, never feed him after midnight. You got it?
Sure, kid. Whatever you say. Hey, listen, thanks. And and have a Merry Christmas.
The rules we have debated since we were kids. They're the silliest group of rules ever, and it is impossible that little Gizmo would live more than 3 days without breaking these rules. There's no way he made it as long as he did.
Oh, yeah.
How does he not get wet?
I don't know.
Say what?
Does he smell real bad? Or is he like a cat? Does he lick himself clean? Because you would think his
must.
fur would be all matted and disgusting. you know?
Yeah. Does he never sweat? Like, yeah, it's so weird.
Does he drink water?
Exactly. I thought that too.
Yeah.
And does he have an internal clock that he shuts off at midnight and never eats? Like, when is it okay to eat again? Everything's after midnight. That's the ultimate slap in the face of the rule.
Yeah.
I love that in part 2 they actually have that meta moment where they're joking about the rules.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. But like in that first one, how could that creature of Gizmo be so adorable in some scenes, and then when they zoom in, so freaking creepy? Like,
That's true.
it was so weird. But as kids, I remember seeing it in the theater twice. One of those times I actually had diarrhea and kept having to leave the theater.
Great.
I'll always remember that.
Your own gremlin.
But I remember just being like, that is the cutest thing on the planet, and I want one. And I got one as a Christmas present a couple years ago, or a couple of years after, a plush. I thought the mom, again, you said it earlier, I think the mom was one of my favorite characters. She was not put off at all by all these goings on. As soon as it happened, she grabs 2 knives and goes to town.
Yeah.
I love that where she grabs one and then goes back for the second knife. That's like, yeah, she's going to kick some ass and take some names.
Yeah.
I love it. Like,
She is
she was
amazing.
not to be tamed with. It's so good. And then my favorite little touch in the whole movie is when the dad calls home from the convention he's at, and there's the time machine in the background, and they come back another scene, and the time machine's gone,
Yeah, that's a
as
good
if
one.
to say that it traveled through time. I love that.
Yeah,
So good.
Yeah, there's a lot crammed in that scene. There's also the robot from Lost in Space.
Yep.
Spielberg's actually, which I had not noticed that he was in that scene until this watch, because you're right. Like,
Oh, no kidding.
I watch it more, for the detail on these go-rounds. I'd never noticed he was in it before. But Spielberg's all over this thing, man. Like, it's hard to... If anybody gets confused and thinks, oh, Spielberg obviously directed Gremlins, you could totally understand why. Not only does it feel like a Spielberg movie, because it has that very 80s Spielberg emotional sort of thing. Like, he was always able to bring you in emotionally to all the characters and the location and the fantasy of it all. Like, he could do that. But his name's all over it. Like, it before the title of the movie, it says Spielberg. Before anything else, he's got when they go by the little theater there on the marquee, or references to E.T. and Close Encounters. He's got the E.T. doll in the toy store. He's got his own cameo there at the convention. What else? I know there's other stuff too, but yeah, he's all over this thing. It's Spielberg heavy, but that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I really enjoy this as well. I love that combination. For me, I think you and I aren't really horror fans, but we are when it's treated like this. Like, if you add comedy in there, if you add, fantasy, sci-fi, that sort of thing. I mean, I love the Alien movies, and those are essentially horror films, but they're wrapped in sci-fi. It's a pretty package that we can absorb. So we do like horror. We just want it treated a little bit differently. And so stuff like this is easy to swallow. And I like, there's very little to complain about in this. I mean, at most it's probably more racially driven. It's, again, the 80s. Anytime you mention anything Chinese, there's a gong sound with it.
Cringe.
It's just what happened then. Yeah, but I like the look of this place. I love how he basically treats Kingston Falls as you could totally picture it being a scene within those snow globes. Like, that's what it looks like. The snow, I think, deliberately looks fake, so that we do get this very surreal, perfect little town sort of look, so that when things start going wrong, it is very, very wrong. And yet it feels like it's in the 50s. because
it has a Saturday Evening Post feel to it.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and that's done on purpose. Everything there feels a little bit old, and pure, I suppose, so that when it all starts going to hell, then it's even worse. Yeah, I was picking up on Kingston Falls. For me, feels like a horrific alternate universe of Bedford Falls from It's a Wonderful Life, and they even have that movie playing in there. And it feels like there's very much parallels between those two, and I think that's done on purpose. I love that. My favorite scene, I think, is probably the bar scene when and you pick up on the Joe Dante of Gremlins 2 here in the Gremlins 1, where it's basically just a showcase of all these really wacky, little miniature sequences with all the Gremlins doing all the things. You got the flasher guy in there. You got the guys all getting drunk. Everyone's playing cards. There's that loner guy who's in the booth by himself, and then one comes up with the hand puppets and like what? None of that even was necessary, but it's perfect. No. It's great. And that's what's cool is so the Mogwai obviously are lovable, but even the Gremlins in their own way are lovable for that sort of thing, because they're so quirky and they're so funny that they're destroying the town and killing everybody, but at some point you're like, all right, that's a pretty good gag there, good on you.
I want one. I know it would be tough to keep, but I want one.
Yeah. And the last note of there I had for part 1, there's a cameo from Chuck Jones of Looney Tunes fame, and also did directed the animated sequences for part 2, is actually at the bar with Billy, because Billy was an aspiring comic artist, right?
Yeah.
And he's the guy sitting next to him commenting on how good his artistry is on Billy's art.
So good. I didn't know that was him. I love it.
It's a very clever placement. That's good. But yeah, overall, if we're going to give a rating, I got to say it's so close to a 5. I don't want to be like a 4.5 sort of thing. I'm trying to stick to solid stars here. You know what? I'm going to give it a 5 because there is strong rewatchability. The look of this thing's great. I'm never not entertained. And just like on this viewing, there's still things I'm seeing that I didn't see before.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a solid 5 for me.
There was such a different level of attention to filmmaking in the 80s, I feel like. And this was a prime example of that. We've talked about it almost every podcast we've done. The music. You can be in a room at the other end with a bunch of other noises going on, and you can hear just a slight little note or two from this film, and that's Gremlins. And this feeling washes over you that it's Gremlins.
Yeah.
It's unexplainable, but it just came from that. Ghostbusters was very similar. You hear that music and you're just like, it's like a warm blanket.
Mm-hmm. And the music is very impressive and very well used in this. Like they even have that song. It's the same song. They just use it in different ways. They slow it down. They make it creepy. They add the sound effects in there. Even the stuff that isn't like the original music, like when the mom's up in the attic and the Gremlins.
Do you hear what
play
I hear?
That Christmas song? Oh man, that is creepy.
That might be my favorite part.
Yeah, that's really good. And you see it on her face. She is freaked out.
Dang.
Rightfully
she
so.
Was so good. Yeah, I was watching that, and when she gets to the base of the stairs, I'm waiting for the song because I've seen it so many times, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought the song was already playing, and I'm like, okay, this, and then as soon as it kicks in, I feel like her. I'm like, it's about to go down, man.
Yeah, it is. So are you giving this a 5 stars as well, or something?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we haven't really worked through exactly what our rating system would be or how we would come to it or how often we would give a perfect score. But if I've got to sit down and put together my top 25 all-time films, Gremlins has to be in there. So I would have to give those movies a perfect score.
Yeah, I think it's really well done, and it is and you have to they debated leaving this scene in apparently, but that whole the dark side of it too that's in there, where that whole scene where Phoebe Cates tells that horrific
Dad in the
story
chimney.
about her father. And man, the punchline is she's like, not only my father died, but that's how I learned about Santa Claus. And yeah, I'm glad they left
And
that in.
we saw that as kids.
Yeah.
That was almost aimed as a kids movie, and they had that line in there. That was kind of gutsy, honestly.
Well, that was something, we talked about it before, but this is a movie that's responsible for the PG-13 rating, and I think that's in the trivia as well, but that was a complaint. They talk about in part 2, when there's that meta moment where the mom comes out complaining in the theater. That was like a real-life moment, apparently, where people were complaining, leaving the theater because they went with their kids because of the rating. It was PG. It's like supposed to be, kids should go see this. And it was, we had the same experience. We watched it with Isabel a few years back. And I'm like, I'm not sure if we should be watching this. And we stopped it because it's pretty scary.
How far did you make it? Do you remember?
Not too far. Basically, when it started going, because it, like those opening scenes, like when I think that's where our first introduction is, the mom in the kitchen, like murdering them horrifically.
The microwave.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of cut it off. We'll come back to that again. All right. So part 2, totally different movie. What do you have to say on it?
Yeah, the feel overall, it felt plastic. It felt fake, especially the scenes in the bottom floor of the building. Very interesting. I think this one, I was very excited about it, of course. I love the features of all the wacky different versions of Gremlins. And I didn't rewatch it before we recorded today, but there's a wonderful Key and Peele sketch. I don't know if you've ever seen it before. That is the room when they pitch Gremlins 2. And they make fun of like, how the hell did this movie get made? It's really good. You got to watch it if you haven't seen it already. I definitely had some questions. I did my bulleted items as I'm watching. I just jot these down. How did Phoebe Cates not know that wasn't Gizmo? Like, seriously? In the first one, did she have... I'm trying to think back. Did she have such limited interaction that she didn't know that wasn't Gizmo? What exactly does it take to get a group of mimes arrested? I thought that was an interesting inclusion. And then I realized, too, like, it's really nuts how all the Gremlins are basically just born, but yet have so much knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Like they come out with whatever Gizmo had in his brain, and that's something I thought a lot about. I thought that was very interesting. I love how, I talked about it a second ago, but I love how the security department challenges the rules. Like, what if they travel across the time zone? Or what if they get something stuck in their teeth? I thought those are great, like, meta moments against the rules. I made this note. That entire building, I said it felt like plastic. It felt like Tim Burton created it.
It kind of, yeah. Well, I thought that was funny. The building, to me, was as if, I picture Billy inadvertently being drawn to it because it felt like an invention his dad would have made. Like, it very much felt like a Peltzer building, as if his father had created it, because it was all highly tech, but nothing worked, you know?
Fire, the untamed element, oldest of man's mysteries, giver of warmth, destroyer of forests. Right now, this building is on fire.
What?
Yes, the building is on fire. Leave the building. Enact the age-old drama of self-preservation.
Fire! Fire!
And,
oh my God.
And that
is
part
so
I really
good.
enjoyed. Yeah. It seemed to make sense in that sort of world. I kind of worked that into my pitch a little bit too. But yeah, this movie is it's a totally different movie. It is in part that it's a totally different movie as a response to the first one, because the first one, that was big complaints, was that it was rated for children, but it was not for children. And this one, they've tried to make more for children. And it's just like Ghostbusters did the same thing. Remember, we talked about that. They acknowledged that kids were supposed to be the target audience. So what they did was they made a goofy cartoon version of the Gremlins. And this is very much what that is. So if you want that, and a lot of people do, then this is a very entertaining movie for that. But my love for Gremlins, the first movie, is that darkness. It's that horror mixed in with everything else. So I don't like this one as much, but I still enjoy it. Like I like seeing a lot of the effects. I like seeing all the different gremlins. There is still some humor in this thing. I mean, you do laugh at some of this stuff. But yeah, it starts off with the Warner Brothers cartoon. It has these like very meta moments where the movie literally stops running, and it's because the gremlins mess with the movie theater, and the Hulk has to come up, and he's in the theater for no reason, just because he's a huge pop star, worldwide, wrestling icon at the time, and so he had to be in there. There's a lot of different cameos and stuff in this thing from people, and but it's all so quirky to where. And it's 100% quirky, like it just from the beginning all the way to the end. So it never really has a blend of anything, but it also doesn't really let up on the gas. Like it's goofy beginning to end. But yeah, it's one giant cartoon, and that's good. But it's not my Gremlins, not my Gremlins.
Yeah, nice. I think one of the craziest moments that really it made it a struggle to write my pitch. Was the Leonard Maltin moment when he's doing the quote unquote movie police video or show that he's recording, and he's talking about Gremlins.
Yeah.
Today we'll start with our video watch. Just re-released on video is the movie Gremlins, though I really can't imagine why. Now I know some people found this movie fun, but me, I'd rather spend 2 hours having root canal work done. What's fun about a movie full of ugly, slimy, mean-spirited, gloppy little monsters who run amok and attack innocent people? Our moviegoers so desperate for entertainment that this kind of trash can pass for fun. Whoa, wait a minute! Oh, just kidding! Ow! A 10! It's a 10!
In this world where no one knows what Gremlins are, like the movie was like a fake of some sort, and then the Gremlins actually pull him back and kill him, I guess. That was so weird. Like, how do you explain that as an audience member? How do you buy into it's so weird? It's such a weird moment.
It is. Yeah, it's a very strange film, but and for kids it probably is if you're going to show your kids the Gremlins, this is probably the ones to show them, because it is disgusting. I mean, there's still some murder scenes and stuff, but
yeah,
it's all done in such a way that it still can come across as, that sort of cartoon comic sort of style, and you get away with it. But there's the effects are slightly different. I know the first one was hiding a little bit under that darkness as to a way to help those effects, but I think they should have done that here too, because there's still a lot of moments where like the stop motion doesn't quite blend with things. You get pulled away from it more because you notice the effects in this one than you do in the first one. There's still those moments in the first one, but they're not as harsh, in my opinion. This one's a bit more harsh. I like some of the stuff. I think Gizmo getting to like go in the style of Rambo and try and be a tough guy and have the training sequence is funny. The Futtermans being alive is strange, because I was pretty confident they were dead.
Same.
Even though what I read was apparently at the very end of the first one, I think it's Rackin' Ricky Rialto, the radio guy, says something over the radio that you can't really hear, but it's something about interviewing Mr. Futterman or something about. So apparently they were alive in the first one. This isn't one of those retcon sort of things where they just change what happened. But I don't like the character treatment in this. It goes along with the cartoon style where everybody's just a bit more over the top. Mr. Futterman's just crazy instead of the angry old guy or whatever. Talking about everything's foreign. Phoebe loses her charm. She's just like a simpleton. It doesn't really work. All the new characters are very much cartoon-like. Mr. Clamp is a cartoon. It has that feel. So, I mean, it is consistent in that. It knows exactly what it wanted to be. It didn't want to be the first Gremlins. It wanted to be its own thing.
That is a great way to review it right there in that one phrase. And I honestly think this is only like the third time I've ever watched it. It's been a long time.
I really don't know how many times I've seen it. But I will say this, as much as it is different, I think it still has rewatchability. I think you can come back and watch this again. Will I want to? I don't know. Maybe. For that, I'm gonna give it like, I think it's middle of the road. It's a 3. If you try and take it out, try not to compare it to the first one. If you can do that, and it's just an independent movie, and it's just this goofy thing about these weird things that invade a electronic building or whatever, fine. It's a fun throwaway sort of movie, and it does have rewatchability for me. I did like seeing. A note I wanted to point out is that there is a shift in the effects crew here. The first one was Chris Wallace, and he had done he has done Star Wars Episode 6. Not all of it. He's a player in this. These are much larger things. Like, he's part of ILM, and Rick Baker has a whole studio of hundreds of people. So it's not just them, and it's not just them working on the entire movie. They're probably just doing portions of it. But anyways, he helped on Star Wars Episode 6. He helped on The Fly, Enemy Mine, Scanners, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you could see, and then you can think of those movies and think of all the effects and stuff. Rick Baker, his stuff is a little bit more in the makeup realm and a little bit scarier stuff with The Exorcist. He does a lot of monkey and gorilla work too. I guess he's good with hair. He did King Kong in '76, the 2004 Hellboy. He did Harry and the Hendersons, Men in Black, and you think about the treatment of like the skin in Gremlins 2. You can kind of see that in the Men in Black characters as well. And he also did American Werewolf in London, which again, amazing. Did you have a rating for that?
I'm with you on this. I probably would have gone even lower than the 3, but your statement about what if you took it as a standalone film, and I agree with that. You know what? If I were to show this to a kid, the 2 movies, I'm with you. I'd show part 2 and then go, hey, did you know there's a prequel when they're like 5 years older? And then show them part 1.
Yeah, that's good. There's a prequel.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Star Wars rule. Like, I'm going to show you 4, 5, and 6. Wait, was there a 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, ultimately, I think 3 is fair. I would watch it again and again just to see the different Gremlins. But outside of that, that's probably it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know when you're squeezing your keywords in.
This is the exact time.
Well,
I think we've kind of landed on a standard here. If you're listening for a possible future giveaway, I'm going to give you a keyword. Jot that down. Keep it somewhere. Whatever you need to do. Your keyword, Kentucky, as in the Kentucky Harvester, which is not, on the surface, a foreign piece of crap.
Yeah.
How would you feel if you found out all the parts of your tractor came in from overseas?
Oh, yeah, and actually, you know what? Before we get into this, I do want to comment on that. For me, I don't know how many other people felt this way, but the second one less so, but it's still in there. But because I have rewatched Gremlins quite a few times, but it always, or rather in later viewings, I realized how much of it is a sort of pro-America sort of propaganda, like the message really seems to be pushing away foreign invasion through technology. Basically, the Gremlins were supposed to be equated to adopting, Asian technology into our homes. That's why it's like a 1950s. That's back when America was wholesome and everything was made in America. It was pro-America, and then we started to bring in foreign cars, foreign televisions, all these things, and it seemed like that's exactly what they were saying, was that those things ruined America. So in that, it is especially racist in being an anti-Asian sort of culture, essentially, maybe just through their technology. But that message, as soon as I saw it, it became so clear that I'm like, I kind of don't know how anybody else isn't talking about this being the Gremlins focus, but I don't know.
That is interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
But it's all there. Like all the signs are there. Like Futterman is the lead in that message. Everything America is great. Everything Asian or foreign is bad. And then he's proven right when all this, basically this Chinese element comes in and destroys the town.
You gotta watch out for the foreigners because they plant gremlins in their machinery. That's the same gremlins brought down our planes in the big one. That's right. World War II. Good old WWII.
Wow, that's a whole different level.
Sorry. I don't know if anybody else sees it that way, but that's what I...
They will now.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody. Sorry for ruining Gremlins for you. Yeah. But it's pitch time. You seem confident in your pitch this go around. You want to go first?
I'll go first. I don't want to diminish my pitch. I'm going to give it and then talk about its flaws. I will say this was the toughest pitch I've had to write, because if you think about the first two films, they are set in a very tight, enclosed space. The first one in a small town, the second one all within a building. And you have to treat the Mogwai are these cute, fluffy creatures. They're not killers. And then you have the Gremlins that are, and then you have these rules that seemingly are unreversible. Once they become a gremlin, you can't bring them back. So every time I came down an avenue, I struggled to figure out what my pitch was going to be. Having said all that, here we go. I'm going for it. The title, I'm going very simple. Just Gremlins 3.
Jerk.
I want... I know, right?
That's what
Did
I
you do the same thing? Sorry.
Well, we got the title
Steven Spielberg needs to direct. Steven Spielberg needs to officially own this franchise. Bring it back to the glory that was the first one. And of course, as is tradition with me, I like a current day setting using the same actors. Bring back Zach Galligan, bring back Phoebe Cates, and more, which I will get to. So the setting is 2021. The film opens on the day-to-day life of Billy Peltzer and his wife Kate, who have now become quite wealthy thanks to the deal with Daniel Clamp. On the surface, everything seems quite normal, and it seems that their life has been free from any drama or the outbreak of any tiny green creatures for many years. Billy and Kate, along with Gizmo, had taken Daniel Clamp up on that offer to work together and had been involved in many projects together, but had always kept Gizmo a secret from the rest of the world. Part of their business agreement. And something that they would agree on that would make the most sense, considering the possible problems that would come from Gizmo being integrated into society. After the events of the first two Gremlin films have become a distant memory to most, most people have forgotten about it. In 1990, the entire world saw the events of Clamp Center unfold on TV as hosted by Grandpa Fred, but most believed it to be a hoax considering the show that he hosted most of the time. Mm-hmm. They thought maybe it was just a ploy to try and get the ratings. And since no gremlins were ever seen outside the building, why worry about it? There were, however, those who believed everything they saw and sought out to locate the gremlins. Their attempts were widely publicized, but always ended in failure, which just added to the mystery. Fast forward to 2021, it's Christmas time in New Kingston Falls, the big tiny town created by Clamp and the Peltzers. As had been the tradition for years, Billy and Kate are hosting their annual Christmas dinner. So, by the way, I said it's Christmas. I love that setting again. Let's bring it back to Christmas. But most of their relatives have already passed. So it's Billy's mom, a small group of friends that they had from New Kingston Falls, and their lifelong friend Pete, played by Corey Feldman, who comes back into the fold. The dinner goes well. Everyone says their goodbyes and heads towards their respective homes. Billy and Kate head to bed, tired from the day. It isn't until they awake the next morning and go to check on Gizmo they notice something is very wrong. Gizmo is freaked out and trying to tell them something in his cute little way. He keeps saying uh-oh and then points at a wet spot on the floor. He musters up the strength in his little Mogwai body to say one word: Pete. Being that it's 2021 and there's always some concern for their safety after the events of the first two films, the Peltzers were smart enough to install cameras throughout the house, including Gizmo's room. They checked the footage to find that Pete had sprayed water on Gizmo, created 4 more Mogwai, and then put them outside the window in a bag, which he retrieved later after leaving their house. All of their security and measures to keep the Mogwai, or to keep Gizmo safe over those years, they hadn't taken into account that they'd be betrayed by a friend. Billy and Kate load up the car and speed over to Pete's house. He's not too far away. They barge in to find Pete surrounded by several well-dressed men with guns. The guys are yelling at him, beating him, and threatening his life because he hadn't come through on, quote-unquote, his end of the deal. He was supposed to have delivered the creatures, but instead they found these pod things at the house. It didn't take long to figure out that Pete had gotten himself into some big trouble and had promised these men a Mogwai to get himself out of said trouble. He had betrayed the Peltzers, created new Mogwai from Gizmo, and brought them home to hand off to these guys. But somewhere along the way, as always happens, the Mogwai got a hold of a snack. And so, wake up to the pods the next morning. The men were now threatening the Peltzers as well, and weren't really paying attention to what was going on with the pods. Before they know what's happening, gremlins are attacking the men with guns and destroying the house. Shots are fired, and the well-dressed men manage to take each other out with their guns, all but one dude. The rest of the night is spent in similar fashion to the first two Gremlins films, but this time with the Peltzers and Pete trying to stop the Gremlins, and this new addition to the crew named Antonio keeping them in check with a gun while trying to keep the Gremlin alive. He wanted to take it back still. During all this craziness, Gizmo emerges from the back seat of the Peltzers' car. He knew they'd need his help and had watched enough movies and TV to know what to do next. He waited for his moment and set several traps around the house, just like he saw in one of his favorite movies, Home Alone, to take down the criminal and the Gremlins. There's a big gap in my details here because I'm not going to write out the entire sequence of everything that happens throughout the evening.
Sure.
That's for a better genius to do. I think we could go with a montage and we'd even be safe.
Yeah.
Eventually, through a weird mixture of sci-fi, horror, and comedy, Gizmo saves the day by taking out all of the quote-unquote bad guys. Pete begs for forgiveness, and, being the generous, sweet people they still are, Billy and Kate forgive him. The Peltzers and Gizmo return home. All is well. Or is it? In a final scene, we see a cut to a secret government lab where Greta, the sexy pinup gremlin from Part 2, is still being held in a cage. The scientists and men in suits in the area are all freaking out. One voice is heard over a radio. He's been spotted. We've located the original. Agents are moving in now.
Oh, no.
End credits.
That's cool. I like you brought Pete back.
I struggled. I wrote 5 different versions of this, and it always ended in a dead end. I just could not figure a way to work out Gizmo and the Gremlins in a bigger environment. It still needs to be contained. You can't let it go big or else it all just unravels.
Right, yeah, because it was either a small town or a building, but if you let it out in the open, then it's, how do you...
It's World War Z.
Right, you're right. Which is a possible sort of thing. I guess they could do that. You know, why not? If you do zombie films, you could do Gremlins on a huger scale. And maybe that's what they'll be doing. I don't know. Well, you stole my title, because I, too, decided not to do a subtitle. Gremlins 3.
That's great.
Yeah, I had some struggles too, and one of them was trying to find a director. I kept trying to think, I want somebody kind of like Joe Dante, but not Joe Dante. And then after a long time, I'm like, why don't I just use Joe Dante? He's a lot like Joe Dante. So, Joe Dante is going to direct Gremlins 3. And I think that's pretty cool anyway, that somebody gets to stick with their entire trilogy. Yeah, because, you know, despite our opinions, Gremlins 2 is completely different from the first one. I think that with the right group, he could come back and do something that is a good blend like he did before. I want something that still feels like the first one, where it's a little bit horrific, but a little bit of funny. And so casting-wise, Zach, I'm going to bring back as well as Billy. And then I want to add a couple of people for comic element. Rob Corddry, who I didn't list stuff that he's from, but he was in like Hot Tub Time Machine. He's that sort of balding guy that's just...
Lugal.
Yes, Lugal. There you go. What was it? what's the band he's in? Cheap Trick or no? He's like but it's
one of those
he changes
80s
it to
hair
Lou
bands.
too, didn't he? I don't remember.
Yeah.
And Craig Robinson, also from Hot Tub Time Machine. I liked them
nice.
in that movie, and so I think they'll be a lot of fun. Those are going to be a couple of our Texas boys that join the crew, and then later on we're going to be introduced to a Chinese leader. Well, I'm giving too much away. Anyway, it's going to be Lucy Liu, because I adore her. And
Same.
Yeah, I'd like to see her in this. And despite my love of Phoebe Cates, she will be in this, but only for like a minute screen time at the end. All right, so here's my Gremlins 3. The duo of Mogwai and man have escaped to the deserts of West Texas, far from precipitous weather and populous cities. We see Billy, a mountain man look of thick hair and thick beard, at a small bar in town, his once-a-month visit to have a beer, check his mail, and hear about the state of the world he left behind. As he reads a letter from Kate asking him to leave Gizmo behind and come home, a news bulletin comes on the television above the bar. There are reports of strange lights in the skies and earthquakes worldwide. One earthquake unearthed a mysterious temple in China under the Forbidden City. Inside are dozens of scrolls referencing personal warriors to defend all the nation's families. There are sketches of the tiny warriors and instructions for their use, but the Chinese government's keeping those details private. As the dust trail fades, we see Billy get out of his aging, rusted truck and enter his home, an old storefront in a ghost town, complete with broken boardwalks and empty horse corrals. Inside the dank wood structure of dust and cobwebs, Billy crosses behind the counter to reveal an electronic keypad behind a wooden panel. The panel says Peltzer, a Clamp Industries company. When the door opens, we're taken on a tour of a home and a laboratory. Newspaper clippings and glass case product displays tell us a history of Daniel Clamp praising Billy for saving his building in the city, the construction of Clamp Corners, the small business support program, Peltzer Inventions being its first financially backed company. We see original and sleek new versions of the bathroom buddy, the peeler juicer, the electric hammer, and finally the pet communicator, which actually there was in a cow communicator in the second one. It's a tiny helmet with wires and antennae sprouting from it. At the end of the displayed inventions hangs a picture of Billy's dad with a plaque underneath. It reads, "If necessity is the mother of invention, then curiosity is its father, Randall Peltzer." Billy shouts for Gizmo as he enters the lab, passing tables of half-finished gadgets, then beakers and jars of chemicals. He sees a Mogwai in a hazmat suit hunched over a microscope. When Billy gets the Mogwai's attention, we see that it's not Gizmo. Billy asks where his friend is, and the Mogwai, Kevin, which I don't know why I named him that, points him to a thick metal door with a red light above it. Kevin. Gizmo emerges, his fur grayer, his belly slightly thicker than we last saw him. They observe a new batch of Mogwai, encased behind thick glass. They're wild, unhinged, and dangerous. Gizmo rejects the batch, and the Mogwais are moved into a caged area for further testing. Nearby is an intermediate room with recently opened cocoons. The next room over is a thicker line of cages, each housing odd-looking gremlins, a giant angled mirror overhead. I don't really ever explain that, but basically they can angle it at any time to pick up the sun and melt them all. Billy picks up a pet communicator helmet, the same worn by all the Mogwai, and asks him to put it on. Gizmo refuses. Billy points out the handful of tame Mogwai lab assistants Gizmo has made and questions what his friend is trying to achieve with his experiments. Appearing defeated, Gizmo grabs a beer and leaves. Accessing a much lower electronic keypad, Gizmo leaves the protected bunker and goes for a walk through the ghost town. It's nighttime. Billy puts the other Mogwai into their cages. Billy briefly tinkers with an invention, then stares longingly at a picture of Kate. Gizmo empties his bottle of beer and stares up at the night sky. Just as he decides to return home, fiery objects crash to earth in the distance. Gizmo runs home to tell Billy. The next day, Billy heads back to town. The shops are demolished except for the church and the bar, which are boarded up using pieces of other buildings. Inside both are the townsfolk, armed to the teeth and scared out of their minds. They let Billy in, and the news shows an alien invasion, and the Texas townsfolk have prepared to defend themselves. Cities worldwide are under attack and losing to the alien hostiles, except for regions of China. They appear to have a secret weapon, and satellite images of China show a huge number of torches and lights throughout the nation. Billy tries to reach Kate and his mom in New York, but the lines are down. He heads back to the ghost town to tell Gizmo he has to go save his loved ones when the aliens descend on the small Texas town. Billy and Gizmo initiate defensive measures, and we see the ghost town bathed in bright lights. In addition, every building is rigged with lethal inventions designed to kill the gremlin creatures had they ever managed to escape the lab. The defense system conveniently serves to kill aliens just as well. but the aliens are relentless. It's obvious they're hell-bent on destroying life on Earth, and last resorts must be taken as the aliens are smashing through into the bunker. Gizmo and Billy lock themselves in the Mogwai in the steel-walled testing chamber and purge the gremlin cages, letting the destructive monsters out into the ghost town. They can hear the screams of both aliens and gremlins being slaughtered. In the morning, the hostiles are gone. Corpses of the fallen all over the lab, ghost town, and surrounding desert. Billy, still determined to go to Kate, says they'll need an army clearing their path if they want to reach New York. He begins constructing tiny helmets, and Gizmo enters the multiplication lab. Inside is a kiddie pool of water, and Gizmo jumps in. A montage of breeding, feeding, cocooning, and gadget building goes by, and hours later there's a room full of armored gremlins, their talons exposed, and with their helmets on, they are under Billy's control. They get in the truck, Billy's gremlin army in the bed, and they head to town. They stop to see that some of the people from the bar and church also made it through the night. Billy stops in for help. He says he can help them survive, but they have to help him get to New York. A select few take helmets, and each get a personal gremlin to control. A small group moves northeast, killing aliens in their path. During the day, dark visors drop over the heads of the gremlin warriors, but as the humans sleep through the nights, something disconnects from one of the little helmets, and they lose some of their crew, human and gremlin. Catching radio broadcasts, they hear that New York is a wasteland, but the tides have turned in Asia as an opposing force has beaten back the aliens. Eventually, the U.S.-based group meets with the force out of China. They've come to help, and we see who they are. A variety of men and women, each with little Mogwais on their shoulders, join with Billy, Gizmo, the Texans, and some folks they picked up along the way. The leader of the China force explains how these Mogwai were protected for generations underground, meant to be a fail-safe defensive measure in case the Chinese people were ever threatened with annihilation, but the Mogwai warriors were forgotten. What makes them special is that there are all females among them, and they breed to create kind and helpful Mogwai that care for humans and seek companionship. Billy says that's great, but Mogwai aren't warriors. Then, when aliens come with the crew, we see what else makes these Mogwai special. They transform into gremlins at will and kill the aliens with ease, then return to their gentle Mogwai state. The group moves to New York. Kingston Falls is destroyed, but Billy finds Kate alive and well in the Futterman's old bunker. We move forward to see Billy and Kate together, Gizmo and a mate together, and they're all happy. Humans are rebuilding, each with a Mogwai by their side. Randall Peltzer's vision of a Peltzer pet in every home fulfilled.
Dang. You went big.
Yeah, I kind of like that one.
I love it. I love that opening scene of him in the small town with the keypad and Gizmo drinking a beer. That's great.
Yeah, so I didn't expect to be able to integrate much of the second one into it, but then when I started to, and especially when I had thought about how there was a tie-in with sort of that failed invention things and then Clamp's investment and stuff, and I thought, well, why not? Why wouldn't they? What if his dad finally got some good funding and distribution and stuff, and he was successful, and so they did get some money, but at the same time, basically, their lives fall apart because Billy needs to protect, if he wants to keep the world safe and keep his friend, then he's got to get away from everything. And so unfortunately it kind of is sad. So like that's the whole thing is Gizmo is basically searching for if there's no female gremlins. Like every time he makes any, like he also wants to see if he can make any kind ones. So he has a few in the lab that aren't really bad, but they're very rare, and he can't find anybody like a female. So that's one of the things too, is we never really know more about, do they only multiply in water? How did they make, and when are they nice and stuff? So I'm trying to expand on that with the whole, basically all the ones from China are all, well, not all of them, but a lot of them are female, and they can change into gremlins when they want. And I thought that was kind of a cool,
that's a great twist
alteration. So like the ones that breed are different, and then the ones that come off them from water and stuff are the ones that these unnatural sort of changes where we have to obey the rules for them, you know.
One of the restrictions that I really felt trapped by in writing this was the fact that once they became gremlins, there was seemingly no way to return back.
Yeah.
Like, because I thought through that in my head, like, what if you waited long enough? Would a gremlin, could they drink a nice tea and just turn back into a Gizmo, a Mogwai, you know? But I couldn't wrap my head around that solution. I love your version of a different Mogwai that we never got to see, that can change at will. That's cool.
Well, and that's I thought immediately when I was going to write something, it was going to be a prequel. Like I thought, you know what, that's going to be way better. We'll either we'll go way back to where they started, or at least maybe go back to when the shop owner found Gizmo, or Gizmo found him, or we don't know anything about how they got together. But
that could have been his little buddy. That could have been his
right
all along.
Could have been. But we're actually going to get into that when we talk about the retakes. So we are in a unique position here with the Gremlins franchise, where we actually have 2 more additions to the franchise. One is a Gremlins 3, which granted we're not too far along, but I think that's going to happen. And a Gremlins animated series, which is going to happen. So first, let's talk Gremlins 3. Chris Columbus and Carl Ellsworth are tied to the writing of this one. Chris Columbus we know from the first one. And Carl Ellsworth has written Red Eye, Disturbia, The Last House on the Left, and the 2012 Red Dawn. And he's also written this Russell Crowe movie that should be coming out soon, Unhinged.
Oh, I saw a trailer for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could kind of tell the suspense and horror stuff is very much his realm. So I think that's nice. This movie was originally set to be a fresh reboot, but once Carl Ellsworth was added as a writer, it was decided it would be made as a sequel to the original. And don't really know at this point if it's going to ignore Gremlins 2.
Ooh.
Columbus says he's really proud of the script. It's as twisted and dark as anything, so we'll see. I wanted to go back to the really twisted sensibility of the first movie, which we're all happy about. I found that was a very easy place for me to fall back into and start writing it again, so hopefully we'll see that movie soon. In an interview with Film in 2017, Chris Columbus said his script explored the idea that has been on the fans' mind for a long time. If all the Gremlins come from getting Gizmo wet and feeding his Mogwai offspring after midnight, should Gizmo be eliminated?
Ooh.
Basically, it's a war on Gizmo. Maybe.
Aww.
Maybe. So that's an interesting... I like that concept. What if one day Billy or whoever decides, you know what? You need to die. And he's on his own, and he has to run. And what if he has to, like, kind of like this, where he makes Gremlins on purpose to defend him?
Oh,
so he's on his own army and stuff. I think that's kind of neat. Maybe I'm taking it too far, but we don't.
I want to see it now.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I am kind of excited about another Gremlins because I do think, it's a hard one because if we treat it like a horror movie, we kind of know that from, movies of the past, the continuations are never as good. Like they just kind of keep they're goofy, and they usually have these weird concept ideas where it's just like, okay, now we're in space or whatever.
Critters, Tremors, yeah,
right, yeah, and they get worse and worse as you keep going. Yeah. But considering
copies of copies,
yeah, considering this is the third one and we've had enough time in between. And as Chris Columbus, I think, I'm optimistic somewhat. But we do have another one that is raring to go. This is the Gremlins animated series called Gremlins Secrets of the Mogwai. This is going to be on HBO Max, which you have now, so that's great. Mm-hmm. Joe Dante is consulting for the series. It says it's coming in 2021, so you won't have it just yet. But it's produced by Amblin and Warner Media, so same folks. That's Spielberg and Warner Brothers. The writers on this is Si Chun. He's also written for Gotham, Once Upon a Time. He's done some movies, Cold Comes the Night and Children of Invention, which he also directed. Also, Anna Christopher is on this. She wrote for My Little Pony Equestria Girls. There's more. She also wrote for Scream, the TV series, and others, although the My Little Pony stuff's really funny. So maybe she's the comedy element in this. And Sarah Nerboso, she wrote for an animated show called Harvey Girls Forever, which I've not heard of. But so I'm assuming they're intending to add some humor in here. And that's interesting to think about. I've never really thought about that. So this is an animated show, right? And you brought in people that have written on other animated shows. That doesn't seem like it would need to be a necessity. Like, what experience do they have over? Because really,
Yeah.
or rather, I guess it's different. They're, in my opinion, a writer for an animated show would be rather unbound. Like there is nothing that would stop you from writing any wild notion that comes in your head, while somebody who has to know that, oh, this has to be made, would have some restrictions. More on the show. Set in 1920s Shanghai, the series will tell the story of how 10-year-old Sam Wing, the future shop owner Mr. Wing in the 1984 movie, met the young Mogwai called Gizmo. So there you go. Along with a teenage street thief named L, Sam and Gizmo take a perilous journey through the Chinese countryside, encountering and sometimes battling colorful monsters and spirits from Chinese folklore. On their quest to return Gizmo to his family and uncover a legendary treasure, they are pursued by a power-hungry industrialist and his growing army of evil gremlins.
Oh, what?
So that's interesting. Yeah, just like what we talked about. So it's going to be about their relationship. We're going to be in China, apparently. And Gizmo's still a hero, and the gremlins are still evil, and but they're separate. Like, there's a separation there, which I guess there always was, but that's interesting.
Wow, that's cool.
It sounds neat. I don't know how, who the audience is for this. I'm not sure if it's
is it aimed at adults or kids or?
But
yeah,
it's on HBO Max, so I don't know.
HBO also owns Sesame Street now, though, too.
I see. Okay, so it could be part of their kids package then.
Could be. Although the fact that you had the two movies, I feel like they're going to try to straddle the line between kids and adults. They want to capture the audience like us that's going to go watch it because of the movies, and then they'd probably like to lead in a whole generation of kids who will go back and watch the movies, and then here comes a part 3. If I'm the marketing and the design team on that, that's the target I go for. Straddle that line and have some humor for both, like Shrek. Shrek is a kids movie with a lot of adult humor.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's more common now. I think they're very aware that they can have a go across a variety of demographics. Well, I am sort of interested and sort of excited about both those.
Same.
When we know more, we'll let you know on the Gremlins 3. And you've got the HBO Max, so you can maybe check out the first episode and let us know if we're the right demographic for this. Now, let's do some trivia.
Oh, I love this part. I'll kick it off here. First bit of trivia. In Cantonese, Mogwai means devil, demon, or gremlin.
There you go.
Interesting.
Judd Nelson and Emilio Estevez were considered for the role of Billy. Judd, I don't see happening.
No.
Emilio? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like Zach. I think he's, I think he's sort of like, what's his name? Will Wheaton, where he's got that very wholesome, sort of innocent sort of thing. Yeah. And I don't think you can stretch him much. I don't think, well, we haven't seen him in much else, right? So, but for this movie, he's perfect.
I agree. At the start of this movie, the movie theater in the town is showing A Boy's Life and Watch the Skies. These were the working titles for executive producers Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, respectively. That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know about the Watch the Skies being like the working title for that. That's cool. After watching Tim Burton's earlier short films, executive producer Steven Spielberg considered him to direct the movie, Gremlins. He decided against it, however, because at the time Burton had never directed a full feature-length movie. And you thought the second one was Tim Burton. But, I'm thinking back on early Tim Burton, which I will say this, there is a division of Tim Burton for me, especially. His earlier movies, fantastic. His later ones, I don't like them. He has a couple of in there that are just rock solid.
Agree.
But yeah, early Tim Burton, I'm a big fan, and I think he probably would have been pretty good for that movie. I think for Gremlins, he would have done pretty well.
I would have loved to have seen that, just to get that little bit of dream that he would have created out of it. Mm-hmm. Near the beginning, as Randall Peltzer, played by Hoyt Axton, makes his way to the curio shop in Chinatown, a wrecked car is seen with the hood up and smoke coming out, That car is an AMC Gremlin. Nice.
That's cool. And it's broken down. Steven Spielberg is really responsible for the introduction of the PG-13 rating. Both Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, which he directed, and Gremlins, which he executive produced, were rated PG upon their release, subsequently criticized for not being kid-appropriate. To avoid being slapped with an R rating in the future, Spielberg suggested that the MPAA add a rating between PG and R. On August 10th, 1984, Red Dawn became the first movie to be released with the new PG-13 rating.
That's, wow. It just makes so much sense. But yet another impact that Spielberg has had on the movie industry, which has been his for so long.
Yeah, he goes to the folks who are in charge of advising, says, you know what, just make another one, okay? I'm Spielberg. Just, how about...
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we'll do it.
I mean, it makes sense.
It
You either
does.
have something that has no cussing, no nudity, is aimed at kids, or you go what could be near porn. There needs to be something in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Kinda crazy.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, us kids is the 80s. Like, our movies were way more adult than they are for the kids now.
Because of that. Yeah, this is a nice compromise in the middle. Though he followed the basic outline of the script, Hoyt Axton is said to have improvised nearly all of his lines. Wow.
He's great. I really liked him in Gremlins, too. He's fantastic. One of the reasons for the no bright lights rule was that in 1984, Joe Dante and Amblin could not completely navigate the perilous waters of special effects for the Gremlin puppets that, well, by keeping them in the dark, this camouflaged the problem. And that's another thing, too, you know, our whole comment on practical versus CGI. They talk about, and there's documentaries and stuff on this, but like they were inventing all of this. Like every day, they had a new problem. They're like, they had to invent a way to get around it or to work with it. A brand new puppet that nobody had ever done before, a new style or whatever. And that's cool. And you don't really have that with CGI. And I guess for a lot of people, they'd say it's a good thing that you don't have those same problems. But at the same time, you don't get to invent, you know?
There's a great documentary on Disney Plus. I forget what it's called exactly, but it's all about the journey that George Lucas went through to make the original trilogy Star Wars. And that's what they were doing. They invented cameras. They spent an entire year in a giant warehouse building stuff without filming a single day, just getting ready for this movie that was going to be so weird and different than anything that had ever been done. And you think back and it's like, you just created an entire future of cinema.
Yeah.
Through what you did. It's amazing. No one expected it to succeed either. And it did.
And that it actually looked good.
Amazing.
It's like, I can invent all kinds of stuff, but it's probably going to look like crap.
like a Peltzer thing.
That's
yeah,
right.
Exactly. A deleted scene shows that Gerald, played by Judge Reinhold, was hiding out in the bank vault while the Gremlins ran wild and is losing his sanity. It's on character.
I did wonder about him. Like, watching this one again, I'm like, why don't we see any update on him at all? Yeah. The Santa speech proved to be controversial, and studio executives insisted upon its removal because they felt it was too ambiguous as to whether it was supposed to be funny or sad. Director Joe Dante, however, stubbornly refused to take the scene out, saying it represented this movie as a whole, which had a combination of horrific and comedic elements. Executive producer Spielberg did not like the scene, but despite his creative control, he viewed this movie as Dante's project and allowed him to leave it in.
Well, I mean, his name was on it.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I think that scene does make the movie. It really sets it like this is, there is some dark humor. This is a dark comedy, and that scene pretty much says it all.
And the same gag works so well in the second one when she's trying to talk about how her deal with President's Day.
Yeah.
And before she can even finish, they cut her off like, no. Ain't nobody got time for this crap again. Like, it speaks to what 2 is all about as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty good gag.
So
I like
good.
that one in the second
one. The original Gremlins script, written by Chris Columbus, was much, much darker. Case in point, earlier scenes included the Gremlins eating Billy's dog, then decapitating his mom and throwing her head down the stairs. Oh my God. Spielberg, director Joe Dante, and Warner Brothers were all in agreement that they should tone down the gore in order to make the movie more family-friendly. Well, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been too... It would have changed it. Yeah.
That was a $190 million decision they made.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Originally, Stripe and Gizmo were the same character. This changed when executive producer Spielberg insisted one of the Gremlins be a good guy with whom the audience could identify.
I'd heard that one before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I meant to bring this up, this next one. This is good that it was in the trivia. Howie Mandel voiced Gizmo, but Michael Winslow of Police Academy fame helped to voice the rest of the Gremlins. I saw his name, Michael Winslow, in the credits. I was like, I never knew he had a part in this, and I meant to look it up. I'm glad that was there.
It's like, we need a bunch of random sounds. Who you got?
This guy has been doing these Police Academy films, might be available.
Yeah.
Height of his fame.
Yeah. All the Gremlins were animatronics, each costing between $30,000 and $40,000. When everyone left the lot for the day, security would have everyone open the trunks of their cars to make sure they weren't stolen.
That's great. I bet some still got out.
Well, when you're on an $11 million budget, yeah, every little bit counts.
I bet any one of those could sell for over $11 million now as a collectible.
Yeah.
Miss Deagle, played by Polly Holliday, the richest lady in town, had named her cats after different kinds of currency, including kopeck, ruble, peso, drachma, and dollar bill. I didn't catch that.
I didn't either.
So good.
That's good. One of the studio notes to director Joe Dante and Spielberg on seeing the first cut was that there were too many Gremlins. Spielberg facetiously suggested cutting them all out and calling the movie People.
I love the feedback. Oh, that's too good. In the fictional town of Kingston Falls in Gremlins looks familiar. That's because it was filmed on the same set used for the town of Hill Valley in Back to the Future, which was released a year later. Wow.
Yeah, that's good to reuse the sets. That's cool. And I'm sure we've seen it in other stuff too. Chris Wallace suggested they use puppets instead of proposed stop motion. As a compromise, the studio suggested a spider monkey in a suit, which was tested at director Joe Dante's office. The animal went crazy, tearing the office apart and defecating everywhere. Dante screamed at the trainer to get the animal and then asked Wallace, "So puppets?"
Oh my God. That's too good. Those were all Gremlins 1 trivia. Now we got some Gremlins 2 trivia for you as well. After Gremlins, 1984, became such a surprise success, Warner Brothers immediately wanted a sequel, but director Joe Dante had had enough Gremlins for a while and declined. Work on this movie proceeded without him as the studio approached various directors and writers. Storylines considered including sending the Gremlins to cities like Las Vegas or even the planet Mars. After these ideas fell through, the studio finally asked Dante again, who agreed on the condition that he be allowed to do anything he wanted. He also received a bigger budget. In the DVD commentaries for Gremlins and this movie, Dante stated that he felt this movie was a case of waiting too long to capitalize on the success of Gremlins, which hurt the movie's chances of success. So they approached him. He told them no. They came back, and then he blamed the failure of the movie on the fact that they waited too long. Way to go, Joe.
Yeah, take no responsibility there. For the special effects, director Joe Dante turned to Rick Baker when Chris Wallace and Rob Bottin had to turn it down. Initially, Baker was not interested as he saw this movie as too much work for a project in which he would not be the creator, but rather a successor to Wallace. He was eventually persuaded to accept the job when it was suggested he could make the Gremlins and Mogwai more diverse. So he basically said, do whatever you want, and he did. He made, how many different kinds of... We probably will never know, because how many different kinds there are.
I mean, and honestly, it was his work that made that movie even palatable.
Mm-hmm.
Had they been exactly like the first one with a weaker story and setting, it might not have been palatable at all.
Mm-hmm.
The DVD and Blu-ray include a longer version of the cartoon short from the beginning of G2. Why? In it, Daffy is informed by Bugs that he has been promoted to executive and is subsequently put in charge writing the title of the movie. When Daffy mistakenly writes the title Gremlins 2 as Gremlins Stew, Bugs corrects the error. Daffy then attempts to rename the film The Return of Super Daffy Meets Gremlins 2 Part 6, the movie. But Bugs rejects this for being too long, changing it back to Gremlins 2. This material was removed from the film because early audiences expected a live-action film and were bewildered by the lengthy animated sequence. Agree. It was already too long.
Yeah.
Or it was still too long.
It's so strange thinking now that we've watched possibly some of the only movies that have these Warner Brothers cartoon things, which was Space Jam, and now we've had this where the Warner Brothers animations are all over this thing. So strange.
Back to back.
The opening aerial shot of New York City was stock footage from Superman 4, The Quest for Peace in 1987.
It was the kiss of death right from the beginning.
You were given a huger budget and you just couldn't be bothered to get your own New York footage?
They're like, well, nobody saw Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. It's fine.
Yeah.
The uplifting end of the world video scene was included by the filmmakers when they found out that one of the news networks actually had such a video prepared to run in case of the end of the world. What? CNN has a video for this purpose in its archive, and its staff are instructed to hold the video for release until the end of the world is confirmed. Oh my God.
I want to see that.
That's insane. I do too.
And does anybody update it?
They've got to.
Or is it still like the same thing from the 80s or whenever they made it?
Oh my God. That's too good.
That is a funny video. Leonard Maltin appears, you talked about this, as himself repeating his criticisms of the original Gremlins movie. In his annual movie guide, he gave Gremlins 2 3 stars out of 4 and refers to this scene as a gratuitous cameo, though he doesn't say he's actually in the movie.
That's too good. When Sir Christopher Lee was cast in the movie, one of the first things he did was apologize to director Joe Dante, who also directed The Howling in 1981, for appearing in Howling 2, Sturba, Werewolf Bitch.
He's probably Dracula in that. At one point in this movie, it seems as if the Gremlins have taken over whatever theater in which the movie was screened. During his DV commentary, Dante says Warner Brothers wanted the sequence cut as they were concerned the audience would believe the film actually had malfunction. Test screening ultimately proved otherwise, however. The video version did cause problems. Instead of film breaking effects, the scene looked like a VHS malfunctioning. Many rental copies were returned as a result of this, and video mastering houses called the filmmakers to ask them if this was intentional. Whoops.
Oh my God.
So it sort of worked.
That's brilliant. Further proving people. Just people. You couldn't wait 15 seconds to see what happened.
Yeah, like it couldn't have been going on that long. Like really, and most people will just fast forward if it gets all fuzzy.
Those are the people that complain to the movie theater owner after watching Gremlins 1, expecting them to change the movie or something.
Yeah.
Oh God. In the original script, Randall Peltzer was to return after the Gremlins were killed at the end and give to Gizmo his newest invention, a wetsuit-like thing that would prevent Gizmo from ever getting wet again. The movie was already running too long, so it was never shot. Huh.
In a corridor of the Clamp Tower, one nameplate says Vectorscope Labs. This is a reference to the movie Inner Space, also directed by Joe Dante.
Oh, good. I didn't catch that. Very good. The movie that Grandpa Fred, Robert Prosky, presents in his show as The Attack of the Octopus People is in fact Octoman from 1971, which featured the first costume designed by Rick Baker.
As the Bat Gremlin crashes through the wall, escaping into the city, it leaves a hole in the shape of the Batman symbol. In 1989, the year before this film's release, Warner Brothers had a huge box office hit with Batman.
So good. And what's funny is some things I've learned over the past few years is DC for a long time ran things and Marvel took the back seat. Now in the recent years that's flipped, right? But DC for the longest time would allow pretty much anyone to use the likenesses of Batman and their characters at will. And Marvel, no one cared. Now it's kind of flipping around where they're all being a lot more protective of their licenses.
Yeah.
So that's cool that there was an inclusion of that back then on the heels of Batman 89.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, I had a lot of fun just talking about Gremlins and Gremlins 2
Same.
and the future of this and our pitches. I mean, this is something that I think is pretty personal for both of us. And obviously we still love Gremlins a lot. We both 5-starred it. So I think, recommendation-wise, go out and watch both of them. They're different movies. Yeah. The second one's kind of a one-off, but you will enjoy it. It's just know what it is. It's goofy. It's a cartoon, essentially, but you'll have fun. And the first one, highly recommended. Add it to your Christmas holiday watching. Don't bring the kids for that one.
That one and Die Hard are the Christmas movies you watch when most everyone else has gone to bed, when the kids are down.
Yeah. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and follow us on Twitter. And as always, thank you very much for coming to Movie Retakes. We'll see you again.
Nerds Unite.